Genshin Impact version 3.0 is coming out soon, and Sumeru looks to be packed with new information, places to explore, and of course, mysteries to uncover. And I, for one, am itching to get started. But since I can't, here's 5 theories to keep the brain buzzing while we wait. In no particular order, of course. Number 1, the Sage's Plan. How is it that the sages just stumbled upon a random newborn god and knew that this god was their new god of wisdom, and then continued to refuse to accept her as their new god? I mean, when Makoto died, a new god was not born to take her place, and A didn't seem to go through any official processes in order to succeed her. I mean, she kind of grabbed the Gnosis and then chucked it. So does that count? And then you had Zhongli, who faked his death, and there was no baby god born. So why is it that the Dendro god died and a new one was born to replace her? That seems a little weird. And how the heck did they even find her? If they had to bring her back to Sumeru, then where on Tevat did they find her to begin with? And why wouldn't the new Dendro Archon be born in Sumeru? Or maybe she was born in Sumeru, but it was just like not the city, and they're taking her back to the city? It's not really clear. It's not like gods are a common commodity, you know? Like after the Archon War, there were basically almost no gods left. That was the point of the Archon War, to get rid of all of the excess gods. Well, it might have been a side effect, but either way, the point is that after the Archon War, there was very, very few gods left. So just going out and finding a god seems pretty difficult to me. Now, the only instance that we have of a nation choosing or finding a god is in Enkanomiya, where they found Orobashi, but even then, that was pretty different. They just wanted any god to overthrow the Sunchild regime, so any god would do. Elemental affiliation, ideals, age, none of that even mattered to the people of Enkanomiya because that's not what they needed. But Sumeru is like super different. They wanted a god of wisdom, and that god had to be Dendro, and you will not convince me that there just so happened to be a god of the correct element and ideal born shortly after their other god conveniently died. That's just way too coincidental. So that begs the question. What if they didn't find her? What if they made her? See, there are actually a few parts of the trailer and the livestream that make me think that the sages are trying to resurrect Rukkhadevata. They claim several times that their god will return, so you gotta wonder if they haven't been trying to bring her back repeatedly over the centuries. Maybe they tried to reconstruct their god using some remnants of her that they happen to have and ended up triggering the birth of a brand new god instead. And that's how they ended up with Kusanali, a god with the same ideal and element as their previous god conveniently, but she's not the clone that they were hoping for, so that's no good because the sages don't like new things. They want their old things back. Now, because this is the Dendro god, I'm gonna use plant analogies here, alright? There are multiple ways to make new versions of a plant. You can take cuttings and put a little bit of root hormone on it or put it in some water and it'll grow roots, and then you can plant it, and that basically allows you to clone a plant, right? Or you can graft it, which is basically the same process, but you use some rootstock. Or you can just grow something from seed, right? Most people just grow things from seed. But while cuttings can actually clone plants fairly reliably, seeds are a bit of a crapshoot depending on the variety of plant. A lot of seeds, like apple seeds, do not grow true to type, which basically means that if you take the seed from let's say a gala apple, and you plant it, the tree that the seed will produce will not actually produce a gala apple tree. Instead, you're going to get a completely random type of apple. The only way to get a gala apple on a new tree is to take cuttings from a previous gala apple tree and splice it or graft it onto another apple tree. So now I'm thinking that Rukkhadevata might have left behind some seeds or seed-like equivalents that the sages got a hold of, and then they tried to plant it or put it through some sort of planting equivalent process that you do with god seeds. I don't know what that would look like. And they expected it to basically produce a clone of Rukkhadevata. Instead, they got a Kusanali. So they lock up this defective clone and they continue their attempts to properly resurrect, or perhaps clone again, the true Rukkhadevata so they can have their real god of wisdom back. Which brings me to number 2, Kusanali's wisdom. If the sages and the academia as a whole value knowledge and wisdom above all else, why would they reject a young god of wisdom? What even is their problem with Kusanali's brand of wisdom, huh? I say brand of wisdom because I think Kusanali and Rukkhadevata might have different types of wisdom that they represent or that they focus on. Consider the fact that Raiden A and Raiden Makoto both shared the ideal of eternity, but their definitions of eternity differed. A believed in an eternity of stasis, while Makoto believed in change as being the true form of eternity because change is just eternal. Likewise, I think Rukkhadevata and Kusanali both share the ideal of wisdom, but define it very differently. Rukkhadevata likely viewed wisdom as the things you know and currently understand, while Kusanali, with her heavy emphasis on dreams, may view wisdom as the ability to imagine new possibilities and glean insights from them. In other words, Kusanali represents innovation, which requires the ability to dream and imagine new possibilities, while Rukkhadevata likely believed in passing on what was already understood, hence her creation of the Akasha System. If we think of it this way, it becomes easier to understand why the sages may reject Kusanali and why they might want their old god back. And also why the adults in Sumeru don't dream. Dreams are whimsical, they're unproductive, they have no scholarly merit. You can't even say if they're right or wrong because they just can't be quantified. And they're completely out of place in an institution of learning. How could any scholar worth their salt stand to worship a daydreaming deity over one that granted them an infinite repository of knowledge? Honestly, I get the feeling these guys probably need to retire. Like, soon. Number 3. Jailbird Kusanali. Kusanali has a super suspicious line in the trailer. She says, "We don't have many more festivals to waste." This kinda suggests that her birthday festival is used for something, and something pretty important at that. Now, Nilo is seen doing her magic dancey dance and making all the lights go swirly, 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 and it's really super pretty and all that, but then it kinda makes it seem like those lights turn into these other lights that shoot up into the sky as parts of Sumeru just start to vanish into thin air. Now, the last time we saw a magic ritual dance that sent all these magic sparkles into the sky was in Yae Miko's story quest, where she danced for the spirits of the yokai, which leaked from the ley lines. Supposedly, her dance was supposed to send them back into the ley lines. So now I'm wondering if the visual similarities here are suggesting that both dances are meant to interact with the ley lines in some way. You'll see where I'm going with this in a second, but we need to proceed on the assumption that Kusanali has the ability to view things remotely or astral project herself using the ley lines. We got to see evidence of this in the 2.8's Golden Apple Archipelago when Kusanali hijacked our Dodo communicator and then manipulated the entire island region by hijacking the Fatui machine, which was also using the ley lines for stuff. Still, even then, she said she was unable to travel. I assume that means physically. Note that in the scene, she also called herself a little bird, and then later in the 3.0 trailer when they're talking about Kusanali, the screen cuts to this scene of a little white bird in a cage. I think it's safe to assume that Kusanali might be locked up somewhere. And that somewhere might be here, at the very top of the city, at the very tip top of this tree here. And I also think that her birthday festival is going to help us bust her out of baby jail. See, this building and parts of the tree it's connected to are the only things that vanish due to the sparkles from Nilo's dance. At least that's kind of what I'm assuming is going on. We've heard it confirmed several times that the Dendro Archon is connected to the ley lines, and we don't know whether they're talking about Rukkhadevata when they say that, or Kusanali, or maybe they're talking about both. But I'm going to assume that Kusanali is connected to them because she apparently can astral project herself through the ley lines all the way to an archipelago in Mondstadt to mess with them. So, you know, that's a thing. So if she's kind of partly in the ley lines and can manipulate them to a degree, even remotely, then Nilo's dance, which can also manipulate the ley lines, theoretically, might be able to help the little Archon to use whatever energy is in there to bust herself out of baby jail. So when she says we don't have many more festivals to waste, she might be meaning to say we're running out of time. Something big might be about to happen in Sumeru, and she feels like she needs her physical body in order to handle it. And if she doesn't get it, then she won't be able to do anything. And that would probably be bad. So yeah, Baby God Jailbreak chapter. Number 4, the Divine Knowledge Capsule. I won't beat around the bush. The Divine Knowledge Capsule looks suspiciously like the shriveled seed that we found in the chasm, only unshriveled. But if this thing is supposed to carry divine knowledge on it, as it's said in the trailer, then doesn't it make it kind of more like a divine flash drive? Now, in the Lazo trailer, Dottore says that divine knowledge cannot be rationally comprehended, and although he says this in relation to Scaramouche and the Electro-Gnosis that's in his possession, supposedly, I'm wondering if there might have actually been a double meaning there. What if some of Rukkhadevata or Kusanali's divine knowledge has been extracted via the Akasha system and then placed into this divine knowledge capsule in an experiment to make a god out of a mortal, or to just pass on the wisdom of a god to a mortal? If divine knowledge can't be rationally comprehended, that means most people's brains probably can't handle it, and maybe it would cause you to go mad, like this guy who supposedly used the divine knowledge capsule and then he went a little bonkers. And fun fact, the Divine Knowledge Capsule does look like it's actually a gemstone of sorts, and thanks to Zhongli's second story quest, we know that stones can contain memories, especially really pure ones, so that kind of supports the flash drive hypothesis, but also, this capsule looks a lot like the Spectre enemies, specifically the Geospectre, which is said to resemble the fruit of the tree that resides in the sky. Now, if you've watched this video of mine, then you'll probably remember that the tree in the sky is the World Tree, also an Irminsul tree, just like a really, really big one. And its fruit are, well, Irminsul fruit, and they hang in the sky posing as stars. During Unreconciled Stars event, one of these fruits fell, and that's how we learned that the sky was a lie, that the stars are actually really close and they're also rocks, and that they contain memories of the dead. Makes you wonder if this capsule doesn't contain something, but instead someone. Like, I don't know, a backup of Rukkhadevata? Number 5, the Akasha System. Tainari says that the Dendro Archon's consciousness is directly connected to the Irminsul. You might notice that he didn't specify which Dendro Archon, though. Now, the Irminsul is connected to the ley lines, and both contain vast amounts of data and memories from the entire world, so it makes sense that the God of Wisdom would be linked up directly to Tevat's version of the internet. But isn't it weird that the people of Sumeru are connected by a similar system, the Akasha system, that's powered by Rukkhadevata's Gnosis? Well, side note, I'm kind of assuming it's powered by Rukkhadevata's Gnosis, but if it is, it raises some weird questions, like, does Kusanali have a second Gnosis? Or was she meant to inherit Rukkhadevata's, and then the sages are keeping her locked up so that she can't take it because they're afraid of losing access to the Akasha system? And what happens if there's 2 Gnosis of the same element at the same time? Because no one's ever thought of a contingency plan for that, and Sorry, I'm getting a little off track. Anyway, my point is, I think it's very possible that the Akasha terminal, while really cool in concept, is actually holding back the progress of Sumeru because having constant access to data means that you're less likely to think creatively. You put too much trust in what's already known, you know? And what happens when that system breaks and you're completely reliant on it? Because we have this dude here, right? He's basically having a mental breakdown, and his Akasha terminal isn't green like everyone else's, it's red. He's probably experiencing a glitch in the system or corrupted data or whatever it is. It's concerning. All you need is one virus in the system that's hooked up directly to your brain, and poof, there goes your hard drive. I mean your biological one, like your brain. So yeah, I honestly, I think we're gonna blow up the Akasha system. Or steal the Gnosis that powers it and shut it off forever. One or the other. You know why? Because in the Travail trailer, Dainsliff says the God of Wisdom's enemy is wisdom itself. And in the City of Scholars, there is a push for folly, but the Archon makes no argument against it. Now remember when I was talking about Kusanali's type of wisdom? And how it might be less what you know and more what you can dream up? It's very possible that Kusanali sees something like the Akasha system as the very thing that holds her nation back from progress. It keeps them stuck in the past and bound only to the teachings of Rukkhadevata, which makes Kusanali's voice and teachings much harder to hear and understand. Now, you might recall that Lisa was the best student the academia had ever seen in over 200 years, and yet she just noped right out of the academia after witnessing, quote, uninhibited erudition from the scholars there and the high price that they had to pay for that. It would certainly explain to me, at least, why Lisa decided to become a librarian and do nothing else. Whether a book is fact or fiction hardly matters, and with all that free time on her hands, she's free to daydream as she pleases. So, yeah, I think we're gonna blow up the Akasha System. Or let it get blown up. Or some equivalent thereof. Well, that's all from me for now, folks. If you still want some more speculations while you wait for Sumeru, I may or may not have another video here that I just made before the live stream came out with some additional ideas that you might find very interesting. I also have a few more little theories to share before the next region drops, so stay tuned, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.